I'm Sheila Anderson, co-host of the NightByrds here on WBGO. The NightByrds, myself and Will Rivera are on Thursday and Friday night, 8 to midnight. And I'm here to welcome a dear friend of mine to the WBGO studios. He is the renowned trombonist and composer, former member of Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra. He's also a Jazz Journalists Association. He's been named in 2022 Trombonist of the Year for a record-breaking 15th time. Also, he's top downbeat critics poll for best trombone for an unprecedented 6 times. And also, recent awards include the Louis Award, the International Trombone Award, and the Satchmo Award, among others. He is a prolific recording artist and extremely popular for his unmatched signature sound, plunger technique, and unique vocals. My dear friend of almost 30 years, Wycliffe Gordon. Can you believe it? 30 years?
That's hard to believe, but then you look back on things and like, yeah, time has flown by and it's still going. So
I know. It's like I blinked and here we are. It's
yes,
like
yes,
what? What? Well, we go way back and I have so many fond memories of hanging with you and hearing you and watch you perform because you are really one of the best performers in my opinion, and you are a multi-instrumental musician. You are going to be performing at the Staten Island Jazz Festival 37 Saturday, December 20th at 7 p.m. at the St. George Theater, 35 Hyatt Street, Staten Island, New York. And you can find out more information at our website or also utasi.org. And also on that date, Arturo Farrell and the Afro Latin Jazz Ensemble, the Brianna Thomas Band,
hmm
Sounds of April and Randall, and Julie Maniscalco, Dectet. And you are going to be performing with Del Signo Trio. So
yes,
let's start there. And then we can go backward. How's that?
sure, that works for me.
Okay. So how long have you been performing with Del Segno Trio? I'm sorry.
Del Signo Trio. Well, this this upcoming gig will actually be the very first time. And
Okay.
matter of fact, I will do a hit or something with them right before that. But I work. The leader of the group is the drummer, Daryl Smith. And years ago, and you may have been at this gig. I was doing something in Marcus Garvey Park, in Harlem, and Alvin Atkinson had something come up. He couldn't make the gig, so he recommended this young guy, and it wasn't my regular band, but he did a good job. He showed up, he played, and I got his number. I said, "Well, I'll just keep your number. We'll stay in touch." He also is one of the he works with the Jazz House kids, so he's been just calling me over the years. Can we get you to come and do a work with the kids on a Sunday or whenever they meet. And that's always hard for me because I moved out of New York in 2016. So if I were there, then I could do that. And I finally got a chance to work with them sometime last year because I was in New York, or actually New Jersey, making a recording. And then I played William Patterson last year, and I didn't have my regular band members, because since COVID and everything else, travel has been, well, you know what travel and everything else has been, but for me, it was a good kind of a slow down moment for many reasons, but I kind of got to the point where I say, I like being home. Being at home is not so bad. So, but anyway, I called Daryl and I put a group together of musicians. I was at William Patterson, and they were working there, and I said, I like playing with this cat, and Alvin Atkinson, who normally plays with me. We're doing the International All Stars, He's been down, up and down south, dealing with his mom, who's you know, having not health issues, but he's kind of the go-to between he and his sister. So he's mostly down in North Carolina. So and Daryl had been asking me not only to work with the Jazz House kids, but this second or third time he asked me about this festival, and I said, well, you know what, I'm going to do it. So I know that's a long roundabout way to answer your question, but this performance will be the actually time I've actually performed with the group. But I work with the drummer, and that's a very integral part of any group. That's the engine. So I feel comfortable and confident with Daryl, and he sent me some recordings of his group. So I'm just looking forward to it. But
I and I am too. I'm the MC, so I will
all
be
right,
there. I can't wait to see you. Will you be singing?
yes,
Of course, of course.
yeah,
Well, let's you talk we're talking about Jazz House Kids and William Patterson, and
mhm,
you're of the last generation of musicians who got to work or know um the quote unquote masters, the previous generation. What kinds of we talk about let's see, all everybody. Because I realized people who were born from you know, from until like 70, 71,
mhm,
Jimmy Heath was alive and Freddie Hubbard was
yeah,
alive and Al and all these people.
mhm,
What kind of things did you learn as a young man that you impart to your students? Because I know you're teaching
yeah.
as well.
Well, the learning from those guys were the old school, and I was just sharing with some of my students last night. Like Slide Hampton, Al Gray, great trombonist because I'm played trombone. But of course, I met Dizzy Gillespie, and last month here at our school, we started this Jazz Masters concert series, and I can always invite young cats, but it started in 2017. But I wanted to invite those that were and still very influential. And Jim Heath was our first guest. He came with his brother Tootie. He had Tootie and Rufus Reed. So we had three, jazz masters recognized by the I can't think of the arts organization right now,
Oh,
but
the NEA.
yes, yes.
Mm.
And that was first. And next year had Jimmy Owens, and after that we had Houston Person. So, and I know sometimes these young folks they wonder why I'm bringing all of the experienced cats, and that's because I wanted them to get experience that I had. And even though that was 30 plus years ago, like Charles McPherson, I remember the first time I heard him play, and he was at our school last month. And oftentimes you don't hear about the jazz masters as great as they are. You hear about whoever's popular and well known because if you have the money to buy the publicity to keep the names and everything out there, how the music machine works, how that works, then that's what you're familiar with. But every time they come, I remember a Houston person talking to our students and they want to know about him playing jazz. Houston loves to play a good melody, something that you can sing. When you leave there, you tapping your feet, and without beating that over your head, you just innately leave a performance like that. Charles McPherson, serious hard bop. I hadn't heard him in a while, and even in his young years now, he still has that big, fat, massive sound. And my students were just kind of blown away. And so was I, because I've been doing mostly teaching. And normally he's traveling with Terrell Stafford or in New York, maybe Steve Davis on trombone. But I taught at the university, and that management team asked if I wanted to play. I was like, well, I'd be happy to play with Mr. McPherson, but I wasn't really in the mood to like just learn a whole nother show. So I mean, anyway, of course I agreed to do it, and I went up on the second or third tune, and I was out there for about 3 or 4 tunes, and I'm sitting there with my mouth kind of wide open, and hopefully not literally, But I was like, oh man, I used to do this all the time. This was the norm for me because in teaching, I find myself I love my students, but trying to do something as simple as getting them to understand the importance of practicing. But everybody that has come from Jimmy, Heath, and Tootie was raw as he can be, and I almost made the mistake of saying, "Well, you got three jazz masters here," and I almost handed the mic. I said, "You know what? The two." I said, "I better not do that," because anyway, I mean, and love him, he was just raw the whole time. But in that performance, we had kids. So, but Al Gray used to tell me, I never forget, and what I try to impart upon my students now is to prepare them just to go out and be in the world. There are the good things about our business, and there are the things that are not so good. They're the good people, the people that's going to be cool and accepting of you, and then there are those that may be um, if I'll just say it, they're threatened by your presence. And I said, I've seen it all. Al Gray was always welcoming and nice to me. Britt Woodman, who played with Duke Ellington, it was always like, Wycliffe, I just love how you approach the trombone. And, to get compliments from those cats, I'm like, you couldn't tell me anything. I didn't get the big head or anything. But like Buster Cooper, who played with everybody from Quincy Jones to Duke, Count Basie, and all of them I knew pretty good. And I used to visit Buster down in Florida. And what I would say about Buster Cooper when he plays, it's just like, man, the trombone's on fire. It's like, man, he's alive. He's gonna bring it to you. But the thing I most remember about him and some of those guys, the way that he would speak to you, like, hey baby, how you doing? I'm like, and the way he would speak to you just made you feel good to be alive. I mean, the trombone playing was killing, but that's what I remember most about him, the feeling of being around those cats. And I want to, in some way, shape, or form, impart that or get my students to see the importance of that human connection that takes place with musicians. And of course, you're gonna run into those that are gonna be hating because you're doing gigs that they're not doing, and I try to encourage my students to stay away from that type of behavior because I've even hired some musicians that'll come into a rehearsal or on a gig and sit down and start talking about other jazz musicians. Yeah. Well, I don't like this one. I say, hey, young guy, say, hey man, if you can avoid that kind of stuff, I ain't saying stuff, but if you can avoid that, do that. I mean, it doesn't make you look good to talk bad about somebody. I say, these are our colleagues, and who some of the people you're talking about could probably be the one that will hire you someday. And and one time this young cat, I ain't gonna say his name, but he was from here. He was talking about Fred Wesley. I did a gig with Fred Wesley down here. He's not really a swinger, man. And then I said, well, okay, where's he going with this? He said, yeah, I didn't. I said, hold up, man. Let me explain something to you. Fred done probably forgot more music than you might learn the rest of your life. So I said, don't talk that shit about Fred. Because I knew Fred personally, excuse the radio, for whatever, for that four-letter word. But I said, hey, man, I said, Fred played with Count Basie. I read his book, Hit Me, Fred. He's most known for playing with and writing with James Brown. But he worked with Ike and Tina Turner. He worked with Rick James, and that was just his lane. And so I'll just say this, and I'll let you get to another question. We were doing a festival in Toronto, and on that festival was Steve Turre, Slide Hampton, Fred Wesley, and myself. So we played the Dakota in Minneapolis, and then we were at the Toronto Jazz Festival or somewhere in Canada. And Steve said, "Well, you were doing," and Fred sounded good playing jazz because he always wanted to do what J.J. Johnson and Curtis Fuller did. And I didn't know that until I read his book. And we said, man, let's do something a little different. Like let's play Chameleon. Now everybody can play. You talking about slides? You talking about Steve Turre and me trying to hang with those cats? We played Chameleon. Then from Fred's first note, he hit one fat quarter note. It was just like wiped out everything. that we not didn't wipe out everything that we were doing, but it was the sound and the feel that he put into that note. And when he started to play, I was like, what you gonna say? We knew what it was, and that was his lane. And the last one I'll tell is about Slide Hampton. Um, Great mentor of mine. I mean, I'm not like I studied with him or anything, but when you're talking about those guys, they taught by example. And I was telling two of my students this last night. I learned this tune by Bud Powell, Dancing the Infidels. And I was like, oh man, I've been working on that. I knew I got it down in the key of F. And Slide and I were backstage somewhere. And I said, I want to play with Slide, not challenging him or anything. But I said, Slide, you want to play a tune together? He said, sure, what do you want to play? I said, blues. He said, yeah, sure. I said, Dancing the Infidels? He said, yeah, I think I know that one. And so we started playing, and I had done worked all my little stuff out. We played 2, 3 chords of back and forth. Then Slide stopped going up in half steps. And I mean, any musician will know what I'm talking about. You learn something oftentimes, what key you're going to do that in. It's the key that is published in. He went through all 12 keys, and I went from sounding cool to like, and I was like, and he just played. He didn't say nothing. I put my horn down. I said, I get it. Get your behind back in the practice room. When they said he habitually sheds and practices, and I share stories like that with my students. I'm like, he didn't have to say anything. He didn't have to speak a word. When he put that horn to his mouth, he said, there you go, young man. And I was like, so this is when it gave me something else to do. And so I want to expose my students to that so they can deal with you know, the you don't have to do that. But I just try to tell them to understand because some of them want to get ready. When I graduate, I want to go to conservatory. I'm going to tell y'all something. You want to go to conservatory, 2 hours a day ain't enough. So conservatory players practice between 6 and 8 hours a day, and you don't want to wait to audition. You're not going to get in the conservatory. You need to go there with that being a part of your thing. So and I have had um, some of the younger cats around, but those things. And Al Gray used to tell me all the time, Wycliffe, make sure people know your name. And I was a little too, I don't want to seem pretentious, but you go back and look at those clips of Count Basie Band, the stars in the band, then the Count Basie Orchestra featuring Snooky Young and Al Gray. And I said, I'm not going to ask when to put my name because I just felt like all the cats were the cats.
Mm.
And when they opened that um, the tennis stadium, Arthur Ashe Stadium, Louis Armstrong Stadium, where they have the big tennis thing in New York, and we played for. I wrote an arrangement of the Star Spangled Banner, and I played on this blues, and people really liked it. And Albert was sitting out there in the other thing, and they didn't say my name. He said, "You are not the trombone player with Wynton Marsalis. That's what you do. Your name is Wycliffe Gordon, and make sure people know your name." I had so much respect for him that when he went through the mishap at the hospital, and he was playing down at the place where James Brown used to run downtown. Anyway,
Oh, Sweet Rhythm,
yes,
Sweet
yes,
Basil.
yeah, Sweet Rhythm. It was a Sweet Rhythm by then,
Mm.
and he's supposed to be not playing in the home with his foot propped up, against his heart. And I was flying in from France or somewhere, and I'm talking about stop by the gig. And he was playing, but he had his foot propped up on a pillow in the chair.
I
Just,
think I
just
was
yeah,
there.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think I was there.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So
remember. Yes.
I asked him, I said, Mr. Gray, I'm going to be playing at the Village Vanguard in a couple of weeks. I would love it if you could come, if you would come down. And he said, well, why? Because I would love to come see you. Getting down the stairs with my foot like this won't be a problem, but I won't be able to get back up the stairs. I said, if you come, I'll carry you back up the stairs. And he came to the gig. He played on the sunny side of the street. Um, what else? Stomping at the Savoy and one other song. And then when the gig was over, I went to put my horn down in the back before I went. to speak to anybody. I stood by that door, and when him and Rosalie came, she grabbed his crutches, and I picked him up and took him up to the stairs to put him in his cab. So I have very fond memories of guys like that, and I'd rather spend the time talking about those that weren't threatened but knew that it was important to
Right.
pass that information on and just give it to the young cats and you know and
Yeah.
not to tell my students some way it's not always sometimes it's not always that way, but just keep your eyes on where it is that you're going, and you're gonna have roadblocks. Life's gonna do that. But
Yeah.
anyway, I know that was a
Nice.
long answer to your question.
Oh no, that's fine. Well, you mentioned the blues, and I've heard the last few years, over the last well, maybe around 10 years, perhaps, that the younger generation doesn't have the same connection to the blues as, for example, your generation. Are you finding that to be a true statement, or is it just
I,
some
I
people?
do not
Oh, okay.
largely in part. They want to play what they do, work these things out. These I call it um, licks. Now it's not true for everyone, but if you're in my class or if you're in my band, we're gonna play some blues. And then some people try to make it hip. I said the blues is hip all by itself. If you're playing a minor blues, I said learn slow book blues. When I send tunes, whether I'm teaching someone that's here or someone online somewhere halfway across the United States, I give them a song list, a jazz song list in three categories: blues, ballads, and 32 bar songs, which can include rhythm changes. But I'm like, learn the blues in three categories of the blues: dominant blues, bird blues, like blues for Alice, like the changes that they call it bird because Charlie Parker was the one that made those set of changes famous. He wasn't the only one that played them, but he nailed them. Then minor blues like Mr. PC. So you're gonna have to deal with the blues. In all of American music. So if you're playing funk, and then I had the privilege of growing up in church. I hadn't been there in a while, but and the feeling like blues. One of the mothers of the blues, like Bessie Smith, and then you have another one of my favorite vocalists, the gospel, which is Mahalia Jackson. And then a good friend of mine, or ours, Eric Reed. We both had the different cities, but kind of the same upbringing and appreciation for gospel music and as it relates to blues, because the blues is just a feeling. And when you're singing about getting through trials and tribulations, whether that's gospel or blues, it's about the feeling. And I would often say Mahalia wouldn't sing blues because she considered it to be the devil's music, and we grew up with that too. Like you can't play jazz, just sacred music, and that's secular music. I'm like, well, if this jazz is what you call in secular music or the devil's music, I said I'm having a hard time with the devil music. I like some of that, and I say I like a lot of it, but
Right.
that's just people.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you take the words away and you listen to Bessie Smith sing, Mahalia Jackson sing. They're coming from the same place of expression. You can call it gospel, you can call it blues, and the only thing that separates how they're singing or how they're expressing themselves are the words. So I make sure that my students get it. They're gonna listen to it, whether they decide to play it or not. I'm like, you know what, that's up to you. But if you learn this, then it's gonna enhance everything that you play. I mean, that's just how I hear it. Jazz wasn't the first music I heard. I heard classical music actually. That's what my dad played, but he played in church. And the way that the preacher would speak, or somebody would lead a song, or this Deacon Ruffin at our church when we moved to Augusta, man. When that dude would pray, I couldn't even understand sometime what he was saying. But I said, man, it's like he just singing. Helen in our Father, and I said, man, people would love when Deacon Ruffin would pray, and it was like a song. He was talking to God, It was a spiritual thing, but you felt the essence of the blues, and the blues is, you know, just a feeling. It's a form of expression.
So can people learn it if they don't feel it? Is that a valid question?
They can learn it, um, but when I'm trying to teach students to play, I always talk about the dance. And a lot of times when these younger or less experienced players aren't swinging, I said, "Wait a minute, how many of y'all dance?" And none of them raise their hands. They don't dance anymore. They're doing this
Wow.
all day and they're TikToking on all of that. So I think that you have to have some experience with it. Now you can learn it. You can break it down. You can put it in the theory or a thesis. But to play it, I
Mhm.
think you got to really, feel it. And the only way to feel it, you got to go in the room. I tell
Mhm.
people, you want to know what gospel feels like? The difference between a Episcopal church, which I went to a couple of days ago, or a Southern Black Baptist church, or Kojic, you have to go in that room. And once you in that room, like I took my students when I was teaching at Juilliard, very good jazz players, they'd never heard the United House of Prayer for all people. So I took them to church with me in Harlem. I said, "Yeah, I want y'all to come check this out." I had four, three of them came because one was working. But everybody in the church was all trombones, one tuba, one baritone. They didn't have a choir. And the way they was playing those trombones, I said, "This, I'll say to anybody, is the most glorious sound that a trombone can make because it sounds like a human voice." And most of those guys, they don't read music. Elder Bab, who's no longer with us, but my students, their mouths were wide open because they've been working on playing licks and stuff. But where that blues come from, or where that feeling comes from, it's in that church. And I'm pretty sure you probably heard them on the streets playing. But when they start out playing and they get cranked up, I'm like, I don't care who I send it to, bass players, trumpet players, drummers, and it becomes something more than just music. Now it's dealing with something that's and inside of people. And if you listen to that music and you don't feel it, and yeah, check your pulse. Maybe there's something wrong with you. But I mean, anybody, you've never been in the church, like you leave, you moved. And it's not because they're trombones. They're just a trombone is one of the most expressive instruments. I say a lot of times everybody loves the saxophone and the trumpet. They're the popular instruments. I say we the Rodney Dangerfield of the instrument world. We get no respect.
Right,
But
right, right.
through JJ and a lot of great trombone players now. But yeah, I think you have to feel it.
Yeah.
You have to be exposed to it. You can learn it, but you got to go towards it. And that's what I tell my students all the time. I can't hand it to you. You have to go, and get it. Let you listen to it. Now you got to go play it, and then see what it's like to play with people that know what that's supposed to feel like.
Wycliffe, you'll be performing Saturday, December 20th at 7 o'clock, St. George Theater, as part of the Staten Island Jazz Festival 37. And you can also go to utasi.org for more information or on WBGO. And quickly, I know we only got a minute, but you're performing somewhere else before that. Am I correct?
Um, well,
In
in New
in New
York,
York, in New
yeah,
York.
that Friday, I'm actually coming up on Thursday.
Okay.
So how before recording session, musicians will take advantage of a gig to work out some of the material. But they'll set
Nice.
no trios. I think they work every weekend at some a hotel that has a jazz venue, listening room,
Oh, okay.
somewhere downtown. I'll
Yeah.
find out and I'll let you know. But it's not. I said I'm happy to sit in. I don't want to play, a
Okay.
full gig, but and so when we have to work some things out, and
Okay.
that'll be a good workout before the festival
Okay.
in Island that day. So
We're ready. I can't wait. Again, Wycliffe Gordon, renowned trombonist and composer, will be performing on December 20th, Saturday at 7 o'clock, Staten Island Jazz Festival at the St. George Theater in Staten Island. And again, utasi.org is the website for the Universal Temple of the Arts, and WBGO.org is our website. If you would like to find out more information, you can go to either place. So we'll hope to see you there. I'll be there. I'm the host. And again, looking forward to see you, my brother,
Yeah, I
and to
look
hear
forward.
you.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Look forward to just being a part with the Queen of Hang. I'm looking forward to
Thank you, my dear.
it. We'll talk soon.
Yes. Bye bye.